Welcome to Most Life, where we have weekly Mo Chats. Our Ahead of the Curve series is someone who's changing the world in their way, bringing new ideas, fresh perspective, and inspiration to you. We will bring new faces, fun chats, interesting ideas, the Most Life system here for you each week at Mo Chats. Enjoy this week. Ryan, thank you for joining us on Ahead of the Curve. Folks, today I'm super excited to have Ryan from Round Pond Wineries, who I personally had visited when we kicked off Most Life, and I'm super excited. Welcome. Ryan is a co-proprietor with her brother Miles of Round Pond Wineries. Ryan, welcome to Ahead of the Curve and Most Life.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And we've got you coming in from Napa, California.
That's right, from here in Rutherford in the Napa Valley.
Very nice. So I'm going to kick it off to you just in a second here because I the whole culture and philosophy of Round Pond, and so that our Most Life viewers can get a sense of Round Pond kind of from your mouth directly. Can you give us a little bit about what Round Pond stands for and a little bit about your personal background and how did you come to be in the situation, the position that you're in?
Sure. So Round Pond is a family-owned business. My family's been here in the Valley since the early 80s. And about almost 15 years ago, my brother and I got involved and took over and took the business from a grape farming to what I call sort of the retail side of the business. We started making our own wine, our own olive oil, other gourmet food products, and then built the winery and mill here in our hospitality experience. And so we're dedicated to providing people with a fantastic experience when they come here to the Napa Valley and producing the best possible products we can from this property, whether it be our wine or our oils or syrups or any other products that we grow here. Great.
And what inspired you to do a little bit more than a typical winery does? I know you have a special organic garden, etc. What inspired you and your brother to do a little bit more?
Well, we do have a wonderful garden here, and I think the inspiration there comes from my mom. She's totally driven and passionate about her garden. It's the love of her life, other than her family. And I think that love has been passed down to us, and love for food and love for wine. We've grown up around that, and so when we were presented with the opportunity to not only grow the grapes and sell them to other local wineries, but to do something ourselves and to create extraordinary products, and then to have people come here and share them, we were really inspired by that. And I think what inspires me continuing today is, growing things in the garden, continually thinking, okay, what could we do with this? What's the next, wonderful product that can come from this property? Our citrus syrups are a great example of that. Just to give you a sense for what I mean by that, we had been making citrus olive oils for a long time, and we had juice that we didn't use, and so the idea came to be that, hey, let's turn this into a syrup. And so we've sort of used everything, all our byproducts from the property, to create an amazing product, and then people can come here and experience and then take home a little bit with them to wherever they're from.
So you're every day able to use some creativity in enhancing your product line, and it's kind of interesting that you're using products from one to another. I won't call it waste, maybe that's not the exact right word, but certainly maximizing what you can off your land or off the fruits and other, I'll say, nature-made ingredients that come your way. And that's inspiring that you're using to the maximum what nature provides. And maybe a little bit about how that came to be and where you and your brother kind of said, let's dig deeper and do it this way.
Sure, that's exactly right. And I think everyone can relate to wanting to use and we're what they have in their garden or in their home. And we're blessed in Napa Valley to have a very prolific land and soil and garden, and so there are so many things, and so it's very soul satisfying to be able to look around and take what we have here and try and turn it into something that we can share. And where that originally came from. It's been an evolution. I think my brother and I were inspired to start a business, and in some sense take, the metaphor is there to take what our parents had started, and to really grow it into something unique and extraordinary. And I think we saw, that the path and the opportunity there existed, and it inspired us to be able to do that and to not only be extraordinary on a product level, but to try and bring this whole garden to table sort of food philosophy to Round Pond and to visitors that came to the Napa Valley. And so I think we were both personally really inspired just by that opportunity. And 10 years later, it's been exciting, and it continues to be exciting.
How long have your parents had the land there? How long has your family been in the area?
So we've been here since the early 80s. We bought our first piece of property in 1983. And the vineyard acreage has grown over time. We purchased our most recent piece of property in 2011. And so now we're at about 450 acres or so, 360 of which is planted. And the rest is orchard and gardens, and our winery and olive mill here, and where my brother and I live, and our parents here as well. So it's been a long time growing, and that's sort of what the wine industry is all about. And I think that's another thing that I'm thankful for every day, that this is family driven, and so we take the long term, and it's where we're going to be, in 20 years or the next generation down the road, and it's fun making a life of it.
I know we have a roadmap for the conversation today, but if you don't mind me kind of piercing through a couple of things, I've got about 20 questions swirling around in my mind
Sure.
as you've been talking about. Kind of a generational perspective, but gosh, I guess you could have chosen another profession. You could have grown up on a winery and said, hey, I'd rather do something differently. Can you talk a little bit about your personal choice of continuing the family tradition and committing yourself to the same work as what your parents had done?
Absolutely. Well, after college, I spent some time back east, actually working for an investment bank. And I loved that experience. I actually met my husband there, but I found that it wasn't quite as soul satisfying as I might have liked. And I remember something my dad always said to me was, "Hey, you'd be great at running a small business, or you should really think about that, and it could be really satisfying." And I think I'd always shaken it off and said, "No, I'm gonna go to the big city and do something." And then I got there and I found, what, I don't know that this is what I want my life to be all about. And so I think I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to come back and see what my dad had been talking about all those years, that your life is about having an impact, I think, and doing something extraordinary, and whatever that is for you. It's different for everybody, but I think I saw that there was real potential here to not only build a business, which is so exciting intellectually and satisfying, but also to touch and feel the land and to do something, get our hands dirty and create a tangible product that people could really enjoy.
So when you had to make that choice, or when you chose to make the choice to go back to your family business, you had to summon up some courage, undoubtedly, or to leave something that more than likely you were successful with that life. So talk about summoning the courage to respond to the desire that was a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that was interesting. So what I did was I went from investment banking and I said, okay, I want something more, but I didn't quite know what that was going to be. And so I actually ended up going back to law school, and with a thought that I want to have an impact. How can I make a difference? And I was thinking maybe it's going to be something in the nonprofit world. And while I was thinking about all of those things, I got involved with our family business, and I started to see the parallels there, and that I could have a real impact, not only in my own life, but on the lives of other people and people that work here and in building this business. And for me, sort of bringing it full circle, I would love for Round Pond to have a nonprofit sort of focus or outlet at some point. We're not there yet, but that's sort of where my own personal interests sort of dovetail and come back together. And that's something I'm working for, and still inspires me, even if it's way out in the future.
Right. Well, that's to me, it's terrifically inspiring to hear about your journey. I think a lot of people in this day and age, myself personally, hear their inner voices kind of talking to them about something more, more fully dimensional for who they are as a person, and matching that up a little bit more closely. Certainly, that's what some of our work at Most Life is about. Helping people uncover or unveil some of those things that might be pushed down over years, that might be pushed down by society or their own personal identity. So the courage that you had and the opportunity you had to really listen to that and go for it certainly is something that I personally feel inspired just to hear about. Now, when you got there, you obviously wanted to put your stamp on it or your energy into the business. Kind of talk about your evolution in the time that you've been there, and I don't know if you had to kind of convince your brother to do the same or if he was already there when you got there.
Well, so he was here. He got on board sort of 2 years before I did, and with this whole thinking, and had started, thinking about building a winery and making some wine. We'd always made wine, but he had the thought, let's start to think about selling it. And so when I came on board, we got our olive oil business. We really started to build the brand together and to start to sort of formulate what is it that we want to do here, where do we want to go into the future. And anytime you start something new, there are moments that are scary and where you're and it is a leap of faith for sure. But with anything, I think if you're just focused on your goals, so for us to be extraordinary, to never let the details slip, in our motto, and I think it's led us well, and it's helped us to end up where we are today.
So the word I keep hearing from you is extraordinary, and as we're focusing on this week of living and the L in life, you're meant to be gone at as much oomph as one can muster within themselves. So the word extraordinary is not one that we often hear people talk about striving for, or outstanding, but extraordinary has a certain ring to it that kind of encompasses a little bit more just by the nature of the word. You had to probably make a commitment to be leaping toward that word, and tell us a little bit about why so high.
Yeah, I have a personal background and experience with the health that I had probably 10 years ago. I had thyroid cancer, and I think it really forced me to step back and say, well, what's the meaning, and why are we all here, and why, and what am I going to do going forward? And I think the only thing that really resonated with me is if I did something extraordinary or I had an impact. Otherwise, what was it all for? And so I think I was probably predisposed that way anyway, but that I experienced, I just wanted whatever I did with my life to have an impact and to do something special. And so I always keep that in the back of my mind, and it continues to drive me. And so I think that's my own personal reason for it.
Well, thanks for sharing that personal tidbit. It's a curious thing as we're soon entering into Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I mentioned to you earlier that I'm a breast cancer survivor, and it caused me to do some reflection as well. People often ask me, do I need that level of scare in my life to summon up kind of getting a purpose-driven life going? And certainly I'll say it helps, because I think everyone I've talked to, and there have been lots of hundreds of people probably I've talked to that have that type of experience. There is something when you're faced with maybe not quite life or death, but it's possible. There is something that I think resonates in our souls to answer the bell or not answer the bell.
Right. No, I completely agree. I think when you're faced with your own mortality, which most of the times you're not when you're young, and I just think you look at the world a little bit different after that, and it's inevitable, I think, although I'm sure it's possible to do without, and hopefully you can do it without having that experience too.
Right, right. And I think that's part of bringing messages to people and getting your story out there is to help inspire people without having to take them to the brink, so to speak. I think if people hear an inspiring story, they can be moved to make a change or to listen to something inside of themselves that they may, again, be kind of squelching or repressing because of a lot of fears.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I truly do appreciate you sharing that. So as you kind of share your personal story and your own call to courage that you answered, what would be some tips that you might kind of call out of that's about them kind of taking the call to live an extraordinary life and at the same time enjoy life? And that's really, to me, the essence of Round Pond is the enjoyment of a lot of pleasures of life.
Absolutely. Oh, I thought about that a lot. I think a couple of key things. One is, if you want to do something, do it. You know, you will never regret it. You can always go back to what you were doing. And I know people feel like that's not really true, or maybe you can and I can't, but I think you can. You can take that leap and try something. You will never regret it. You can go back to what you're doing. Nothing is, irreversible. So that's the first piece of advice, and try it, how I try and live my life. And then secondly, do it now. Don't do it later. Whether or not you're going to get sick, it's life is moving by quickly. And when you wake up, I've woke up and my oldest is 9 years old, and I can't believe it. And when I was a child, I always talked about what am I going to do in the future, and it was always the future. And I, somewhere along the line, woke up and thought, this is the future. It's now, and to do whatever you're going to do, and do it now while you can. So those are my pieces of advice.
That's great advice, and it's almost as if you could have whispered in my ear a couple of months ago when I chose to listen to that type of advice. And the other thing that you may have experienced as well is that you're going to get criticism from people who knew you in the world that they have identified you with. And I think sometimes that's an obstacle for people to overcome. People knew me in a certain life in a certain way, and we had to all redefine that as I moved into a new choice. I'm sure you had that as well.
Sure. I mean, I think sometimes it's hard for people to accept change is a hard thing, but it's sort of trying to learn to embrace change, and I think that's where you can have an extraordinary life, and you can feel so much reward and purpose as a result.
Well, your message, truthfully, Ryan, was much more inspiring than I had imagined that we would get into. I appreciate you sharing your personal journey and your personal inspirations with us, and your reason for wanting to go extraordinary. Whatever your parents did to raise another strong MacDonnell and have a brother and sister, the two of you kind of taking on the next level and the next phase of a family business is certainly an inspiring story for me personally to listen to, and everyone who watches this interview will be inspired as well. We appreciate you visiting us on our Living Week, and I know we will be sharing some Round Pond visuals and some other information with our audience through the week, and we really appreciate you sharing your story and being a part of Most Life and letting me get to know you a little bit. It's been very, very inspiring.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining Ahead of the Curve. So thank you, Ryan MacDonnell, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for watching the Ahead of the Curve series with Most Life.